Hi, everybody. A very good evening and a very warm welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for joining us at this time. And our speaker is also here. I hope you all are really excited to meet her, right? Because I am thrilled as she is here. So, first of all, a very happy Women's Day to all the women out there. And what better than us being joined by a woman that is an inspiration to so many designers out there? And she is really, ma'am, you're really an inspiration to so many people out there. And Elize, ma'am, she's here. So let me take a moment to introduce her first. And yeah, I already see the excitement in the comment section. Yes, guys, keep popping messages because ma'am is so happy to see all the comments that you're doing. Okay, so let me introduce our speaker for you. Elize is a user experience designer, Adobe XD educator, and speaker. She spent the first 5 years of her career leading UX teams at agencies before moving towards a consultative and education focused path. She has a passion for motivating and empowering designers through her speaking engagements and content on YouTube and Instagram. She has designed winning UX strategies for clients such as Adobe, USA Today Network, and Keller Williams. Welcome, ma'am. I'm audible.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Yes, I'm Elize. Thank you for the introduction. I'm excited to be doing this workshop with you guys today, the why and how of design systems. I'm going to now share my screen with you guys. Sorry, Tevleen, were you saying something?
No one, yeah. I was just asking the participants that if they have any queries, they can ask whatever they want. Elize will be answering all your queries. And yeah, over to you, ma'am.
Okay, great. Yeah, feel free to utilize the chat. I will be looking at it throughout our session today if you do have any questions. So happy International Women's Day. I didn't even know that was happening today. So I also just woke up. So I'm getting all the news myself. Maybe you guys can introduce me to what's going on this happy Monday. Let's share my screen with y'all so you can see my presentation. Yes. So hi, I'm Elize, Design Systems. Let's talk about it. So yes, I design. I currently am a UX designer. I'm also teaching for General Assembly, Adobe, and Springboard. I love teaching UX design. My whole goal is to make UX education a good time because I love teaching, I love user experience, and I love sharing this education with other people. I also create content on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, all the things. Feel free to connect with me. Ask me any questions after this. Elize_UX to connect. All right. So what are you going to expect for today? Well, I'm going to do a little presentation here, just talking a little bit about the evolution of design systems. We're going to actually get into Adobe XD, and I'm going to show you how you can begin to create a design system yourself. Also, I will be sharing out a design file that you guys can download after today's session. It's like maybe like a blueprint for you guys. I'll show you what I'm talking about. So you can download it and even start editing and changing it and seeing how someone else has created a design system so that you can take little pieces yourself and apply it to your own design system. Tell me a little bit about you guys in the chat. What is your design background and potentially your company type? Are you in a larger company, a really small team? Are you guys already using design systems? Is like, this is the first time you're hearing about it. What is a design system? Where are you guys at? Please feel free to just tell me a little bit about yourself in the chat. Mahamud says, hi, Elize. Hello. We have Suresh. Hello everyone and happy Women's Day. Yes, thank you so much. We have Photoshopper Stop is an engineering student. Super cool. Welcome. We have Rotor, graduated from Springboard and looking for his first job. A little frustrated, but still trying. Yeah, I hear you. It can be frustrating. Just keep persevering and keep applying your process into new projects and applying that into your portfolio. That's what's really important, is just to keep working and keep applying it and learning. We have another UX student, Sarah. Nice. A self-taught designer, working 1 year as a front-end developer and transitioning to UI UX. Nahilenial. Oh, really cool. 30. We got a lot of students. This is awesome. I love students. So let's get into design systems. So what are they? Here's a definition: a collection of reusable components guided by clear standards that can be assembled together to build any number of applications. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the evolution. Have you guys ever used style guides before? Style guides are typically the company's branding rules for visual elements and written content. And there's nothing really that technical about it. It doesn't really go into any components, any actual interactions in the site or anything like that. Have you guys used one of these, or even used one of these and build out a whole website and created components based on a style guide? I'm also going to show you an example of one. Here we have Spotify's style guide. Here's their logos. They have use of their icons, minimum, maximum sizes, logo misuse, some of their colors, some of their logo naming restrictions, right? So let's look in the chat here. Sarah says yes. Suresh said yes. Some company has their own font. Some say not yet. Okay, so you might come across this at some point where companies just worked on a style guide. And this was pretty common before, because this was mostly for use for print use before we became so digital. And a lot of companies are still using style guides to build whole websites off of. Which is all very, very challenging, because then it really leaves it open to interpretation, right? So you can, one designer can be creating a button that's very, very different from another designer if they're just working off the style guide, right? With fonts and logos and colors, and that's all you have to work with. Then there was an evolution. It went from style guide to pattern library, and a lot more companies were adopting this, especially larger enterprise companies. And this is where we'd have centralized and digitized collection of brands use reusable assets. So we start to now have button styling, typography, etc. But there was no governance on how these actual elements should be assembled together and be working together. So yes, let's look at another example. There is perhaps something like this, where we're able to see we have some of the colors, right? We have some of the typography. We have the UI components here. So we have card layouts, and you can see right here how that card is interacting. And you also get some of these code snippets here. But we're not able to see how these actually interact with one another. And we're not able to see the documentation for us to really understand how to use these. How do we assemble these together so that it's really consistent with all of our products? So that was the missing element here. And Google created material design to start thinking about how to create this single source of truth and create these building blocks for the design. So material design came in 2014 and just to change the game and made it much more extensive. And what a design system consists of is foundations, so those colors, typographies, etc., and the components that we saw, right? Form, fields, buttons, etc. But then we also have the patterns, so common page layouts. So we see here this combination of components. So here we see like the avatar being used for the profile. And then we see a comment section and a button, and we're seeing all these things kind of combined together. We also will have assets in them as well, brand photography, illustration, and most importantly here we have that documentation guidelines, standards, how they should be used or not used. And so this is a really important piece here. These are kind of like thinking about like Legos. How do we put them together and in a way that is consistent throughout our products? All right, I want to also just show you the material design system now that we're talking about. Have you guys used design systems before? Have you looked at material design and ever looked at just like some of the documentation there and been like, oh, wow, it's quite extensive. You could see here, like on the left-hand side, these are all their components. And I just selected the cards component. That's it, right? So this is all for cards. So here they have an interactive demo of how you can actually utilize cards. They have usage and all the principles of its usage, anatomy of a card, the dividers on a card. Here, there's like a video here on how you should use full width dividers, some of the behaviors, transitions, the do's and don'ts, like this is what you should do. And this is what you should not do, right? So they have all of that. Plus they also have the implementation here too, as well. So they have the code here as well. So I didn't even hit the tip of the iceberg. If I show you like how long, how long it goes for cards, like this is crazy, right? It's quite extensive, and it's all design systems do not need to be this extensive, right? Google is a very large company. But this just goes to show you how extensive you can make it so that it's so crystal clear from one designer to the next what you do with cards and what you don't do when you're designing cards. Quite a lot, right? So why do we do these? Why are we, by the way, I did create my presentation in Adobe XD too. So why do we do and create these design systems? One, it helps us to minimize duplication. So one designer might be creating a button style and another one will be creating a different little button style. And so they're both spending time creating buttons. And now if we just have one button style that everyone's using across the board, it's less overall going to be less time that people are spending, and we're avoiding duplication of all these different types of button styling. Even if it's really minimal, like this, just the shadow is a little different, but it's now not, you're creating this inconsistency too, right? Same thing goes with this. Just the little X, right? The little close button over here is just slightly smaller than this one, but now we have two sets. Which one do we use? Now, I've been talking about this one a bunch. It creates that consistency. What this helps does is, number one, users will know how to use your product, right? So it's not different, an interaction on one page than it is for another page. Right? Or even for when you have multiple products, for one product than for another product. It also gives that brand more credibility. If you are looking, as a user or as even an investor, and you're seeing it so inconsistent from one page to the next, it kind of loses the credibility of the whole company. Also, of course, scale, right? So when we think about having this source of truth, it increases that efficiency and consistency, which allows a company, especially a very large company, to build faster products at scale. So if there are companies that are quite large, they have multiple products, they can just start to utilize the components and the design system to just build pages really, really fast. And that's typically how a lot of larger companies are doing it, right? They're just plugging and playing. And if they need to build a new component, they will, but they're just grabbing all the different components and putting them together, all those Legos, putting them together and creating new pages and new products. But every design system is different. Right. So I'm talking about some larger companies. We're talking about some smaller companies. Larger companies with multiple products, like I'm just talking about, will benefit from a very robust system that really describes all the different pieces like we saw for material design, because they're building things really quickly. This is an example from HubSpot where they have all these different products that they're creating. So they are one of the companies that are going to really benefit the most from this system. Smaller teams may benefit from a bit of a more leaner design system. So, not as extensive. One, because building a system like that, like we just saw for material design, is expensive and time consuming. You are working with designers, developer teams, all creating this design system together. And it takes a lot of effort to do this, right? So, if you're a smaller team, you might not have the time and resources to be spending months and months and months creating this extensive design system. Also, smaller smaller companies, you might be doing more rebrands and pivots, especially startups, right? Your company is still working itself out. You can't create a whole design system and then you're like, oh wait, now we need to like scratch that. We need to change everything. And you're kind of starting from scratch or trying to like reuse them and pivot towards something else. So when you're smaller and you're still working yourself out, you want to be more lean. Also, when you're creating a design system, there's all these sign-offs that need to happen. So the design team, maybe there's a couple people who are leading the design system, and they have to get it all checked off with other designers, with the lead developers that are working on the project. And you have to get a lot of people to say, okay, yes, we want to create maybe this new component. Right. So it's just a little bit more slow. There's not just one or a couple team members that are like, let's create a new form field. It has all these different levels, these different sign-offs to go through first. Now, what is atomic design? Have you ever heard of atomic design before? This is a methodology by Brad Frost. He started this. And this methodology is basically that all interfaces are made up of smaller components. So we can start to break down interfaces into fundamental building blocks and then work up from there. So when we think about something like atoms over here, which is maybe just a little rectangle for the button, or just text, these are the atoms. And then we can combine those together to build a molecule. And this could be a button or a card. And then from there, when we start to use multiple cards together, we start to build this organism. And from there, we can take all these different organisms, put them onto a page, and becomes a template for a page, right? And then you have your multiple pages. So this is kind of the way we want to think about building a design system, is starting from the foundational layers and then building upon those to create this design system. Some of you have heard of it, some of you haven't. Yeah, this is great to also study a little bit more of atomic design from Brad Frost when you want to start building your components. Now, what I want to do is just give you a little tour in Adobe XD. Have you guys used Adobe XD before, or is this your first time? I want to know. Also, something I'm going to do is give you guys right now in the chat. Can I give it to you? I cannot. I'm going to give it to our host, who will be able to share it with you guys, is just this file with this design system and all these components for you to play around with later, just so you have access to it. Some of you have used XD. Okay. Oh, you guys have used it quite often. All right, cool. So what I'll do is I'll just do a very quick tour then for those who haven't used it. Oh, there we go. There, it's been shared now. So here is the paste board where you're going to be designing away. Ramesh, you're saying you use Sketch, Figma, and Adobe XD. They're all kind of fairly similar in their layouts. It's not that crazy different. Here we have all of the artboards that we're designing. On the left-hand side over here, all the way over here in this area is the toolbar where you have select options, rectangle, circle, line, text. It's a very, very lean toolbar. Once I select something, let's say this rectangle here, on the right-hand side is my property inspector, and it changes depending on what I've selected. So I now selected this rectangle. Now I can make edits and changes to this rectangle. Right, so I can change out the colors, etc. if I want to. Same thing with text. I can change out the character styles, blah, blah, blah. So that is your property inspector. All the things you want to do to edit and change are right there. Okay, now what I want to share with you guys, we got the little basics here. Here we've created, there's created these art boards with the beginning of the design system. So here we are with the foundation of the design system. And I have my colors and typography, etc. And this is maybe where you first begin when you're starting to design something from scratch. Is, oh, okay, what are the colors and the typography I potentially want to start using before I get into design? Maybe you already have something you've been working off of and you want to create a design system off of it. This might be where you start to, let's put our colors in, let's put our typography in. Again, I think I talked, we had it in here earlier, the foundations piece, right? So in XD, I showed you when I selected this rectangle, you can change colors over here, which is something you can totally do, right? I can change it from red to a dark burgundy. But there is something called document assets inside XD. And I'm going to show you where it is, and then I'm going to show you what it does. So on the left-hand side where that toolbar was, down below, there's these 3 menu options. On the very top, it says libraries. These are my document assets. Okay. And here I can have all of the colors, character styles, and components that I'm using throughout this design system. And what I would want to do is I want to first select all of these colors that I'm going to use. And then I'm going to just use this little plus button next to colors and add them into my document assets as saved colors. Now, the difference between utilizing it here on the left-hand side than over here on the right-hand side is if I make a change to this color, let's say, let's go with this red one. If I right-click and edit it, and I make a change to that color, it's going to make that change across my whole design system. Anywhere I'm using that color, it's going to change that color. So that's why we start to use document assets. Because if you guys have heard anything like of components before, if you guys ever use that, or if you haven't, you want, when let's say we have our company is doing a brand refresh and we decided we're not going to use red, we're going to start to use like a darker red or a blue. Well, instead of having to change each individual element across all of your boards, you just do a right click, edit, and change, and now it's reflected across them all. So that is really the benefit of colors. Also, from there, we'd want to do the same thing for our character styles. So here I have 5 character styles. I'm just going to take them all, and just like I did for colors over here, I'm going to go to character styles, and there's a little plus button next to that, and I'm going to add that little plus button. Now I have my character styles here. What I can do too, so let's say this is my H1, I can just double click into here and I could just relabel them as well. You know, if these are my, oops. Like that, or maybe it's my H4, whatever it is. So now it's the same thing. If I wanted to make any edits, I just right click edit. Let's say I want to make my H1 red. It's going to make all of my H1s red, or I can change the character styles, etc. So this, again, this is where you're ruling everything through here on the left-hand side in your document assets. Okay, so same things for colors and for typography. Now let's start building off of that into buttons. Some of you said you do know about components. Maybe some of you have not. Totally okay. Let's talk about components a little bit. So a component here, this is a molecule, right? Or a component button that I'm going to use. It's using the blue from my colors over here. For that rectangle, and it's also using text. So I'm combining those 2 elements together here, and I'm building that molecule. And from here, I want to be able to reuse this button over and over and throughout my designs. Well, same thing like for my character styles and my colors. I want it so that if I make a change to this button, it's going to reflect across all the other buttons. So first thing you do is you can right click, and there's this option to make it a component. And I know that it's a component because it has now this like green line around it, and it has this green diamond in the corner. This is now my main component, the component that rules them all. If I make a copy of that component, it now has a white diamond. Now, what that means is, so I can have multiple versions of this. If I change this component here, I change this to purple, it's going to reflect across all of those instances, all the copies of that main component. But I can make overrides. So this is my instance of my component, or a replica or copy of it. I can make that one, gross brown, and it's not going to affect the other one. So you can make these overrides and changes to the copies of them, and that won't affect the main component. Okay, so that's components. I want to keep it blue though. Let's keep it like that. So here I have my main button, my component. You guys, how are you guys doing there? Any questions or anything? Feel free to put it in the chat as I'm going through, because I am looking through and looking at the chat to make sure you guys are okay and you're with me. And if you have any concerns or questions, I'm here for you. So I have my button now, but I want to start growing that components, right? I want to start using it in multiple places. So for example, let's say one of my cards, I decide I want to have a card now with a button inside it. So something that we have in a feature in XD is something called stacks. And over here, on the right-hand side is this option above padding over here called stacks. What that does is allows everything in here. So let's say I want to, I want to move this text up. It's just now maintaining the same amount of the distance between my elements as I'm able to move these through. So I can actually be able to move them about as I please, and it's still maintaining that distance. So now I said I want to bring a button in. I'm just going to go into this button, make sure I'm within it. I'm going to paste the button in, but I want it down below here. So now all of everything, all the content is moving and keeping that same spacing between all my elements. And I can also change that spacing if I want to. This just grab this little pink rectangle, and I can be able to drag it around and change it about if I want to. But now this is my component, my card with my new button inside it. Okay, now I'm pausing because I see people have been asking questions now. So, okay. At what stage, Pooja's asking, at what stage of the project are we designing a design system? So this is a good question, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about this in a little bit, but what you would want to have and what you want to start your design system at the very beginning stages is just this, some of your colors and your typography you're using. But as you go through your project, you're going to start adding components based on context, right? Based on what you actually have to create. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in just a second. Ramesh, while working with the button, we need to change the size according to the text. Do I need to maintain padding manually? No. So that's a great one, Ramesh. So here's my button, right? Something I didn't show you is a feature called padding. So what you're talking about here is maybe you're making some text like this, and then now you have to change the background according to the text. Something like that, right? We have this feature called padding. So if I have this selected and I turn on over here on the right-hand side, I just showed you stacks. If I turn on padding here, it's the same thing where now when I type into it, the padding is staying consistent. The padding is over here on the right-hand side. It's saying, it's 10 pixels from the top, 24 from the left, that says 11. Let's do 10 from the bottom and 24 from the left. So it's going to maintain that same padding no matter how much text is inside that. So now that, because this is a component and I used an instance of that component in here, now that padding is also consistent and is inside this same button, the same component as well. So it's maintained that property of that main component, the one that rules all of the other ones, and it has the padding alongside this one as well. So now when I'm using this across my designs, it's going to maintain that as well. Man, my like throat is a little, let me take a sip of my coffee. There we go. Monday mornings. It's 7:30 in the morning for me. So I'm still getting my voice. I have to do my vocal warm-ups. Me. So here, let's grab this component. I'm going to make a copy of it. And here we're going to, again, start to expand upon our component here. And I have this other feature I want to show you. It's a repeat grid here. If I turn this on, I have these little handles that I can drag over and it can create that same group to infinity horizontally or vertically if I want to. So now I have this component. I can take all of these elements, right click, and I can make this a component. So now you're starting to see components within components within components. So like I said, if I make any changes here to this master component, to this main component, it's now reflected across all of those buttons that I'm using, right? So that's kind of the power of utilizing these components and building off of them. And it's going to be reflected across this design file, but across any design file that is that uses this design system. And I'll talk more about how you can share with others too in just a second. But I want to answer Pooja's question around building the design system. Like, oh, am I supposed to start designing and have like 50 artboards before I get into the design? And the answer is no. There's no way exactly to know all the things that you're going to need. So the way you want to start thinking about it is you'll have a whole separate design file. This design system is only for design system, right? You're not going to use it for actually designing. This is what it's dedicated for. That's it. You're going to have a whole new design file for when you're actually designing. So here, let's say I'm designing, a sign-in screen or login screen. And I have, I decided I want to have, some fields. What's that little field? I have some fields that I want to add. And so now I realize, okay, this is going to be something I need to reuse over and over in my component library on my design system. And so here you can take this form field as you're designing, but you're not going to make it a component here. Does anyone know why? Well, I'm going to let you think about it. But when I'm not going to make a component here because I'm going to copy this and I am going to bring it into my design system. And from this point, if I didn't have any form fields created, this is when I would create a whole new artboard in my design system that's dedicated to fields. And then I'm going to paste that group into the design system. From here, then you might want to, put some labeling. Okay, this is the field. Maybe you put a little bit of documentation into your field and how it's used a little bit. You don't have to as you're designing. It depends on your workflow. If you're like, I'm going to do a little bit of this later, I want to do it right now, etc. You're going to paste it here, and then you're going to make that component here in the design system. So now I'm going to right click and make it a component. Because where you make that first component, that main component, that's where it stays. You can't make it a component on one file and then take it to another file and like, this is actually the one where it's the main component and rules them all. You have to actually birth it here in this file first. So now that this is my main component here, what I want to do is I'm going to first show you how you can start to share this design file this design system with other people really quick first. So over here in my document asset with my colors and character styles and components, and I see my document assets, right next to it is this little upload and it says publish as a library, right? You see this whole module. I've already published this as a library, but you would have the option here it would say publish if this is your first time. I'm going to show you what it kind of looks like, but here, once you've selected publish, you are going to get these options that you can share it with other people too. So you can add other people who can also edit this master design library with you. Or you can add people that you want them just to have view access. They can't actually create any components or anything like that. They can only view and use the components. So those are the two options that you have when you publish it. The other thing you have to do is you need to make sure that this is a cloud document. This is not a local design file. Okay, so here you can see it has a little cloud next to it. This is a cloud document. So you can do file, save as a local document, or file, save as a cloud document, right? So you have a couple options. So you need to make sure this is a cloud document before you're able to share it with other people. So once I've made a new main document here, once I've made a new component here, I want to then update my component. So that's what I was doing over here. Instead of uploading, I was updating. Anytime you make any changes into this design library, you need to update it just in that same way. Going over here, update. Okay. Because once you click update, any design file that is sharing this design file will be notified of that change once you've made that update. So let's go back into that other design file. Something that I haven't showed you yet. Here is my document assets, right? For my colors, typography, there's nothing in here. These are just within this document. If I go left, this little arrow over here, I can see all the libraries I've been connected to. So if someone shared a design file with me, or if I'm working in a different file and it's shared with me, all those libraries are going to be in here. So when I click Design Systems Demo, here are all the colors and character styles and components from that design system that I've uploaded. And I can have access to multiple libraries in here. I can also browse my libraries and I can turn some of them on or off. So this was my design systems demo library that I have already uploaded and it's shared with myself because I made it, but I could turn it on or turn it off, right? So if you have someone shared a design system with you, right, and you don't want to use it and you're like, well, you can just turn that off. Okay. So now going back to that form. So now I've created this as a master main component. I've updated this file. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this, this component, go back to my design file, and then I can paste it in. Now it's attached to that same file, right? So, or to that original file. So that's how you're going to actually be utilizing those components. You are going to first create it here like, okay, this is what I want. And this is going to be, now I decided this is going to be a new component. You're going to take it, copy it, paste it into the main actual design systems file, make it a component, and then bring it back into your file that you were working off of. So you're just going to have to utilize both of those design files at the same time as you're creating it. And so this answers the question of like, well, what do I need to design right when I begin? You don't need to have everything laid out. You're going to be designing and adding to your design system as you are going through your product and designing, right? Because you don't know all the things that you need to create right up front, typically. So that's how you work with those separate design files within one design system. Okay. There was a lot there. So now what I would like to talk a little bit more about is how you can share this design system too with your development team. And one of the things that you'll see on this file is that there is this heading with a menu. And we've actually have this little menu that we've created here where you have all of the items listed out on all of your artboards. So it's prototyped. We're using this prototyping feature here, where if you click into this menu, you're going to see this little menu pop out. So let me show you. If I click menu, you're going to see this pop out, and then you can go into different sections. So this just makes it easier when we're going to share this with other people for them to be able to go through and find what they're looking for. So let me show you now how you would share this, and it's going to make a little bit more sense in just a second. UI UX design tips. Yes, that is the overlay prototyping feature. If you're interested in learning more about prototyping too, I do a bunch of prototyping events, but I have also a past event I can share with you guys too. It's also on my site, elizeux.com /events. And you can see all my past events. And there's one advanced prototyping. If that's of interest to you, you want to get better at prototyping in XD, I highly recommend checking it out and getting better at prototyping there. So from here, I'm going to go into share mode. So I was in design mode, there's prototyping mode, and share mode, right? Once I've clicked share mode, I've prototyped this whole design file here. So these are all the things. It's like, okay, I'm going to share this whole design file here. And on the right-hand side, you can change what your viewing settings are. Is this just for design review? Do you want just your other peers to give you feedback or stakeholders to give feedback? Is it for developers? Is it for user testing, etc.? There's different options to share. The other thing I'm going to mention is you want to make sure you've selected downloadable assets right here, that you can export downloadable assets, and that you can change the link access. Is it for only invited people or anyone with the link? So from there, you can create a link. So that's the link here, and you can just select that link, and I'm going to paste it over here. And so here now we can see this is the link that came from sharing it. So now when I click this little menu, now this is when it's going to make more sense. When you share this document, they don't have to like kind of just click through all the different artboards. They can just go ahead and be able to click through and see. And from here, you have a couple options. This is I've made this link for developer review. But even though if it's for developer review, on the right-hand side here is this little message icon here with a little number right here. You can make comments. So you can actually even give more context if you want. If this is for developer, you can make a little comment like, whatever it may be. You can make some comments to each other and you could submit it, or you can ask questions to each other. You can reply, what does this mean? What have you. You can have those conversations so that it's just more like in context so people can see, oh, we're talking about this in particular, and just makes it easier to have that conversation. But right underneath that is the dev specs. And from here, now you can see actually all the specs there. You can grab CSS snippets. You can copy and paste any content and copy, appearance, hex codes, etc. is all in here. And this makes it just really easy for everything to be all saved here for the developer to be able to use. The other thing here is the assets, right? So we have the assets that are downloadable as well. So they can select that and they can download it as a SVG or a PNG. Okay, you guys are asking for the link for the previous ones. Okay, any Suresh said feedback is awesome and also irritating at the same time. Yeah, but we have to work in teams and we always need feedback. But I hear you. Sometimes feedback is not so fun, depending on who's giving it to. Now, one thing else really quickly I'm going to mention about the exporting thing is if you want something I'm going back into design mode. Let's say I wanted all these icons to be exported. You actually have to remark what you want exported. So on the right-hand side in my properties inspector, at the very bottom, there's a little check mark that says mark for export. You have to be the one to go through and mark what you want exported. XD won't do it automatically for you. It doesn't know what you want exported. So all those images or PNGs or what have you, let's say I get into this layer, I want to mark for export. These are things that you just need to make sure that you do in order for those to be downloadable. Okay, so we've talked about now this like evolution of a design system, and you might be wondering like, well, how far do I need to take this? And it's really, you're going to have to decide that between your team and your company. And again, like if it's a smaller company, it's a larger company, where you think the product is going to go, how many design team members are there. The smaller the team, the more lean, the less extensive you really have to be. This just right here, which is, laying out those buttons and components and maybe putting a little bit of context, is probably quite enough. That's probably as far as you need to take it. So as you're designing, you're adding more and more to it, and you're making it so that you understand how you're using these components, but also any other team members can get into this system with you and be also able to work together to like understand how to use these components. And that might be a great place to be like, that's awesome. That's how we want our design system to go for now. But maybe you want to have more, you want to take it to that next level. You're like, I'm ready to go almost, material design level, or at least getting closer to that. There is a plugin called Zeroheight. So I'm not going to show you how to download plugins right now. Feel free to just look that up, how to download plugins in XD. It's really easy, but I'll show you where the designs live once you've plugged it in. Over here in the bottom left corner is plugins. Vanilla is asking, what's the setting for exporting 1x, 2x? So when you download, once you've downloaded those assets, they will just download as 1x, 2x. So here, those are the two options it gives you. Let's go back. Oh, I only have an SVG to show you right now, but you will have the option for 1x, 2x when you download. If you want to do 3x, 4x, there is another plugin called Custom Export if you did want that option for some reason as well. Suresh is asking, while exporting and while sending it to the developer, do you separate images and colors and logo and fonts by folder? So I would just kind of like how it is in here, you're wanting to group your designs in what order, and you can talk to your developer team what makes sense to them, how they would like it. But I would typically, you can follow this. I gave this link to you guys. You can follow this kind of system just to get an understanding of how you might want to lay out the different groups. So colors and typography, you might share an artboard, and you might have a whole different artboard for logos. And then maybe you have another folder or another artboard for all of your icons and stuff like that. So you'll want to kind of figure out what makes sense for you guys logically, but also feel free to use this as somewhat of a blueprint as well to get an understanding. Sharanash, sorry if I'm saying it wrong. When do we use SVG? SVG, you use that typically for icons. That's going to be the crispest, oh my gosh, sorry to say, crispest, the crispiest. Oh my gosh, it's going to be the most crisp version of the icon if you're using an SVG format versus PNG. Okay, so let's talk. What was I was getting into? Oh, Zeroheight. Okay, let's talk about Zeroheight. So Zeroheight is a new plugin where you're able to upload all of your components. And let me show you what Zeroheight is first, what it kind of looks like. So here is the site Zeroheight, and you could actually try it for free. You can have one design system that you can apply it to. And so this is another company that's using the Zeroheight, and they've kind of gone that route of going just that next level where they have that anatomy, they have some of those, all the different text, interactive states, etc. They've kind of are taking it to that next level with documentation. And this again is maybe more helpful when you're working on larger teams with the design and developers all working off this together. So let me show you what it looks like when you've created your own in Zeroheight. So I've made now this this file that I'm going to work off of, and I have already uploaded colors, typography, etc. And you can add different pages. So if you want to have a whole page dedicated to icons, or a whole page dedicated to your different cards, etc., you can add those pages there. And it's kind of like very simple to use. You know, you can have something like that. You can start to add a little bit of like text of what this means. And then you can, add little tabs and stuff like that. And you can then begin to add what you want in here. So you can add paragraphs, headings. You can upload your design from XD, and I'm going to show that in a sec. You can have your code in here. You can add images, GIFs, videos, little dividers, the do's and the don'ts. You can add some attachments, and there's also design tokens as well. So there is a lot of options to really push it to that next level. And here, design uploads, I'm going to select that. When I click into it, when I showed you in here, when I've selected, some things that I want to have, maybe my buttons and whatnot, I can upload those through my plugin here. And I've already done that. So I've uploaded through that plugin. And so now when I'm uploading or mostly more like downloading from there into Zeroheight, I can bring in based on like components. Like I can just select based on components or particular artboards that I want to bring in, etc. So I can add from there. Then I'll have those components that are brought in from XD. Then you can add your little notes. This is how it should be used, blah, 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 right? You can add those paragraphs, etc. Add some code snippets, add a little GIF of how it's being used, of when it's how it's interacting, all of that. Again, you can kind of take it to whatever level you want to take it to. You can study some of these other design systems like material design and see what makes sense for you, right? And you could even see the way they talk about cards and like what of that applies to me. And it could be a really fun way for you just to start exploring using them and seeing what makes sense for you. Also, even if you don't have a company you're working for, you can still play around with this. This is free, and you can start just creating your own design system and maybe seeing, is this something I like, creating design systems? Because there are teams that have team members that are just dedicated to the design system. And people who really like it, that's a whole job just in its own. That's a whole role where companies like, you are the dedicated design system manager. And if you love it, like that might be something you get into and go deeper into and become more niche in that way. So Pashal is asking why you need to get into Zeroheight. So when I talked about the different levels of creating a design system, we talked about, okay, you can be in Adobe XD creating this design system like this and sharing it with others. And that might be totally fine, right? This might work incredible for your team. But I was saying, if you want to take it to that next level, like Material Design's design system, let's look at that once more, where you can have, where you can have these GIFs, you can have do's and don'ts, you can have a lot more heavy documentation. You cannot do this in Adobe XD, right? You can't do any of this. these GIFs, these videos, how extensive it is, all of this you cannot do. So the point of Zeroheight is like, well, what can I get here? Is my company ready for this? I want it to go more in this direction. Then you can use Zeroheight to start doing a lot more documentation and putting code snippets all together in that design system that you share. So that's kind of like, I'm giving you the different degrees of creating a design system and letting it be open-ended for you to decide what's best for you, but knowing that there is that option to take it to that next level. Cool. All right, guys, we've just got a couple more minutes here. Shika, sorry if I'm saying your guys' name incorrectly. Shika, thank you so much. I'm so glad that you've attended my previous sessions and that you've enjoyed them. All right. Anybody have some final questions? We've got just a few minutes to spare now. UX UI Design Tip says, you can use it like a blueprint for creating a great comprehensive design system. Yeah, totally. Exactly. So this is another material.io. Salesforce also has an incredible design system as well, if you want to check that one out to see, again, just some more design systems to get familiar with it. And then of course, just play around. I also shared this design file that I was using, so you guys can have fun, play around in here, create your own design systems that might utilize this a little bit here, and have fun again. Like that's what it's all about. All right, I don't see any questions. Gotham, industry readiness tips for designers to get into Adobe. I'm guessing that's a question. Maybe you want some tips. And one place to check out is letsxd.com. There's so many resources, articles, videos, etc. The other thing I'll mention is in my events page, elizeux.com/events. In my past events, I have tons of videos too on intro to Adobe XD, advanced prototyping. You can even watch one of my past design systems workshops that I've done. And you can see a lot more if you want to get into it and follow along and get better at Adobe XD as well. All right, guys, we have another last question here. Suresh asks, XD versus Figma. And your session was awesome. Yay, I'm so glad you enjoyed it. So XD's focus is really on prototyping, how to make advanced, great looking prototypes that are easy to make. So really making animations so much easy. It's been so much easier to make great looking animations in XD than any other platform I've used. And something that's really important when I've been, whenever I've interviewed, like I recently interviewed at Facebook, they want to see your prototypes. So if you want to have great looking prototypes to share in your portfolio, like I highly recommend XD for that. What Figma is really putting their energy on is team collaboration with a browser-based platform. So everything is like multiple people can be in the file at the same time, designing away together, and it's great for larger teams. Now, XD does have a feature where you can invite people like this over into your document, and you guys can design together in real time by enabling co-editing. So there is still that same feature there, but it's not browser based. So that whole thing kind of adds this whole new element for Figma. There was another question, students who want to get into UI UX. I also am teaching on my site, I'm teaching a free 2-hour introductory into UX through General Assembly. If you want to take a look at that, I think it's March 18th or something. You can go check that out. Also, I would just highly recommend reading a ton of books and going to events and going on Instagram, YouTube, all the things, and just immersing yourself in as much as you can. And before paying a lot of money for any sort of boot camp, maybe just spending a little bit more time on free things, free workshops, maybe somewhat cheaper courses to see, okay, is this something I want? Do I want to spend a little bit more time and money into this, and start investing progressively as you like start to build up on your skills? So that's something I would highly recommend. All right, guys, that is time. If you have any other further questions, feel free to connect with me online. We are at time. Thank you guys for your lovely questions and for participating. I hope to see you guys soon. Let me just stop screen sharing here too, so you can stop looking at that file. And I'm wishing you guys all the best.
Thank you so much, ma'am. That was a wonderful, wonderful session. And thank you so much for sparing time for us. I know it was really early. You joined us 6:50 in the morning, and it was a great session. We've learned a lot, and I'm sure that our participants here have also learned a lot. You've told so much about XD, about how people should invest more in learning rather than in courses. And yeah, there's so much more to learn. So, guys, still, if you have any more questions, we are attaching ma'am's LinkedIn in the chat section. Just connect with her and you can ask her any questions that you want. And that's all from your side, ma'am. Thank you so much for joining once again. Really, really glad to have you here. We are really honored. Thank you.
Yay. Yeah, great. Thanks for having me. Connect with you later.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Bye.
So, guys, this event was sponsored by Adobe XD. So, do join in and do sign up for membership to Designaire to continue watching more of such events. We are going to have tons of fun in so many events. There are more to come, and we have a jam-packed session of events for you all. The link is again attached in the comment section. How to join Designaire. And of course, do not forget to fill the feedback form, because that is how you get the certificates. Okay, thank you so much for joining in, guys. Thank you very much. That's all from my side.